Then on Sports Central, we go over USFL game preview and prediction on the Week 1 matchup between the New Jersey Generals and the Birmingham Stallions. Both teams coming into this league with potential and high hopes of being the best team in the league. Should make for a good matchup coming up here in Week 1. We'll be going over a full game preview and prediction on this matchup here today. Games will be on Saturday, April 16th, the first game to be kicked off of this USFL season, and it's going to be in Birmingham, Alabama. And in case you guys didn't know already, actually all the games for the USFL this season will be in Birmingham. That is just to, I think, keep the budget lower and keep the chances of this league surviving. Obviously, in the first season, we've seen leagues come and go, like the AAF a couple of years ago. The XFL had some good success actually in 2020 before COVID canceled it. So that was obviously a tough situation for the XFL, and they're coming back next year. But it looks like for the USFL, they're going to keep all the games in one city, which makes sense. I think it's going to be between two different stadiums if I'm right. But yeah, so this game will be in Birmingham, and your kickoff is 7:30 p.m. Eastern. So we got prime time on Saturday. Spread's going Stallions here by 3.5. So Birmingham is favored in this matchup. And obviously it's tough to predict these teams right now. Especially for the first couple of weeks, it'll be tough because, I mean, these players are on brand new teams. They've hardly ever played with each other, if any. And so it's tough to predict. But, I mean, if you look at the rosters, you can see, like, which players will be likely the key players, the impact players, and you can kind of go from there. And that's what I've been looking over the past couple of weeks. And I have released my first set of rankings for this league. I've got the Stallions at number 2. And I'll be releasing rankings on the weekly. So be sure to be subscribed for USFL content and to get my updated rankings every week. And so I also have the Generals at number 6. So I do think Birmingham Stallions definitely a team that I think they got a good chance to be in the championship later on. And the Generals, I mean, roster-wise, I mean, they show potential defensively. They lack some experience and some depth. And so that is a concern for me. Stallions, I mean, it looks like some pretty good depth, and they got a lot of potential. I mean, both teams have potential for sure, but I see that especially in Birmingham. So I do have the Generals at number 6 versus the Stallions at number 2. Yeah, spread 3.5 towards the Stallions. The over-under is 49.5. So, and obviously the over-under for this league for the first couple of weeks will be pretty low. I mean, 49.5 is pretty low. But it makes sense. I mean, you got two teams that are very new to each other. You got offenses that have hardly played with each other yet. And so it makes sense to see the defense is likely to be the strong part and kind of control these games, especially in the first couple of weeks. I would be very surprised if we saw over 70 points scored in any of these games, mainly because you got lots of new teams here, and they're still getting used to playing with each other. So that's something to keep in mind as we go by the next couple of weeks here. But moving into the future, I mean, once we get to like week 4, week 5, maybe that could be different. But as of right now, that's how it's going to be. Key points for this one, you got Generals, DeAndre Johnson. Looks to be the starting quarterback for this team. I'd be surprised if anyone else started other than him. I think DeAndre Johnson's got the most potential. He's got the highest ceiling out of any quarterback on New Jersey's roster. So we'll see what happens. It's not set in stone quite yet, but it looks like he's going to be the starting quarterback, and this team does show potential with him under center. And, of course, you got the running back, the former Ohio State running back there, Mike Weber. And then you got former TCU standout receiver Kavontae Turpin also on this roster. So, I mean, I like this offense. This offense looks good here. You got some good depth. You got some good experience. I like how this offense looks for the Generals here. But defensively, I mean, the secondary looks good for the Generals, but the D-line and linebacking situation is a bit of a concern. There's not a lot of experience there, not a lot of depth. So I do think the defensive secondary, this team will be just fine. But when it comes down to the D-line and the linebacking core, that does concern me a bit. But Generals, otherwise, I mean, offensively, I do like how this team looks. You look at the Stallions, you got Alex McGough, of course, looks to be the starting quarterback for this team. You got lots of good depth in the running back position. Brooks, Marable, Chun, all three of them definitely are going to be key factors. And you got great depth in the receiving core. This team potentially has got the best receiving core in the league, I'd say. They got a strong, deep roster. And that's the thing about the USFL and kind of my rankings how I ordered the teams in my week 1 team rankings, mainly based off of how the teams obviously look on the rosters. But if you look at most teams in the league, You got most teams are good on one side of the ball, but the other side of the ball not so much. For example, the Generals, I'd say the Generals' strong suit is their offense. Meanwhile, their defensive secondary is good, but I just don't know about them otherwise defensively. So I'd say Generals' offense is much stronger. Meanwhile, for the Stallions, you got a pretty balanced skill level between your offense and defense. And so I think for Birmingham, that's going to be definitely a benefit for them, is that they're going to be good. I'd say both on offense and defense, and I see potential on both sides of the ball there. So, yeah, Stallions definitely a team that I like. I've got them ranked number 2 in my Week 1 rankings, so I do think that they'll be a definite contender in this league. But that said, let's get to the prediction here for Generals and Stallions coming up here in Week 1 of the USFL. I'm going to go with Stallions here. 27-21 is my predicted final score. I just feel like Birmingham here. I'm more confident picking this team. As I've mentioned before, they just look, it's tough to predict these games because we haven't seen these teams play yet. We'll know more as the season progresses, but I do think the Stallions here, I like how they look on both sides of the ball. They definitely show, I'd say, more potential than the Generals. They got more depth, lots of experience as well. So I'm going to go Stallions here to get the win. 27-21 is my predicted final score here. I'm going to go 55% towards the Stallions. Obviously, it's tough to pick when you've never seen these teams play yet, but that's kind of the fun of it as well. But you got over under 49.5. I'll take the under for this game. I think what I'm going to do for these first 4 games here in Week 1, I will be taking the under for at least 3 out of the 4, mainly because I feel like, with it being the first, it's the first week of action. These players have hardly played with each other yet, and I just don't expect to see any big shootouts. I really think that what's going to happen is we see plenty of low-scoring games this weekend. Offensively, all these teams have got little experience with each other, so it's going to be hard to put up points. And I think the defense is going to control, for most of these games. But, even this, 27-21 isn't a terribly low-scoring game, but, I do expect the games this weekend to be more on the lower scoring end of things. But I do expect Birmingham to cover as well, which is a 3.5 point spread towards the Stallions right now. I've got them covering the spread and winning the game 27-21. Let me know your thoughts and comments below on this game, and I appreciate you guys all watching as always. Stay tuned for more from All Sports Central. Catch you on the next one.